Now on 0344 499 1000. Calls charged at provider's national rate.
This is very good. We're very relaxed in here, aren't we, Jackie? We're very relaxed. Jackie goes out and she buys little things from the supermarket to
just
make
little
us
snacks.
relax. I'm going to say snacks. What are we talking about, Jackie?
Pineapple slices, melon slices,
melons.
And later on, when our stomach's really rumbling, I've got a few little nuts we can eat.
Because because after 3 hours last night, the two of us were ravenous, weren't we?
But my stomach was rumbling so loudly and was so near the microphone.
But I'm saying, the reason I'm saying that we're a bit relaxed around here, because now we've welcomed in two more guests and our friends, and we have a lovely dog called Lola, who's just walking around and sniffing everything out.
She's a showgirl.
Lola. Her name was Lola. She was a showgirl, and she was on show because she was a greyhound, and as far as I know, she was a racing greyhound. And the reason we're talking about greyhounds is nearly 6,500 greyhounds retire from racing every year. 6,500 of them. What happens to them then after that? So let's speak to our guest to find out the answer from that. We've got Mark Bird. Mark is the managing director of the Greyhound Board of Great Britain, and beside him Julie Collier. Julie is a greyhound broadcaster, and that's a speciality, isn't it?
It is. It's very niche.
And and tell me this, Lola, is Lola yours?
Lola's mine, yes.
Oh, well done, you.
You met my previous greyhound, Roxy, many years ago, and unfortunately we lost her in January.
And do you know, I was listening to Matthew Wright earlier today, and he was talking about putting when it comes to the end for pets and dogs in particular. And the way it is, and there were actually a number of people were sharing their experiences, and it's sad, but hopefully it's peaceful and everything.
Horrific would be the words I just. I mean, it was peaceful and everything, but it was the worst time of my life. It was very difficult. But then the house wasn't the same, and you know what a big fan I am of greyhounds. So we went and got Lola in February. So she's
now. When you say you went
6
and
months,
got
yes.
Lola in February, where did you go to get her, and what is Lola's story?
We went to the place where I took you many years ago,
Hersham
Hounds in Esher.
Yeah.
And I was just walking dogs every day because I was missing my greyhound, and she walked in one day, and that was that basically. But many homing centres across the country, many branches of the Greyhound Trust, many places that just have greyhounds specifically, like Hersham Hounds, Battersea Dogs Trust. There's so many of them around.
But Julia, straight away, people will say, and Jackie was talking about it earlier, that there are dogs and then there are greyhounds, and the idea that a greyhound. Well, what I remember going to Hersham, and I did think about it when I was out walking the dogs at Hersham. I didn't walk the dog walked me. They're very strong and they're good, but I do understand that it's not that stereotypical thing that you think you're going to let them off the lead and phew, they're going to disappear.
Or that you have to do laps with them, like 20 laps of the park.
So that's going to be the main concern, I think, for people.
And a lot of people do want low maintenance dogs.
They are the most low maintenance dog. I think there was a survey in the Times, and they were second for the most low maintenance dogs. They're absolute couch potatoes, and this is the biggest misconception. When they're racing, they run for 30 seconds a week, and then they sleep in their kennel the rest of the time. When you say they took you for a walk, I think there was one that you actually couldn't walk. He didn't want to walk at all as well. So I've got a video of it. And they're coming out of a kennel, they're excited, they want to go for a walk. They're very, very different once they're in the home. They need very little exercise. They're brilliant for older people. And that's the biggest misconception, is that they need a lot of exercise. And honestly, I was sick a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't want to get up. I stayed in bed. She stayed in bed with me till 2:00 in the afternoon. And then I thought, I better take her out. But she wasn't moving. I had to get her up.
And loads of people who have greyhounds, if you meet people in the park, they adore them, and they would not have any other breed of dog.
Where is
So
Lola?
true. She's down here. She's asleep.
She's asleep down there, and that's the voice of Mark Bird you're hearing. And Mark is the managing director of the Greyhound Board of Great Britain. And Mark, a lot of people will be asking questions, and they will say, well, look, listen, you guys encourage these dogs to be bred and to be raced and whatever it is. What's your responsibility? Do you have any responsibility when they come to the end of their purposeful or their racing life?
Well, we have every responsibility, and we had this conversation before we came in. We talk about retired greyhounds, but actually the racing life of a greyhound is probably till about the age of 4. So a dog has at least 2/3 of their life still ahead of them as a pet. But whilst they're racing, and up to the point when they retire, that comes under the guise of the Greyhound Board. So there are rules, there are laws, all of which look after the welfare of the dogs. When it comes to retirement, our ambition is to make sure that those dogs go into a homed environment.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's your ambition. What's the reality of all of that? How successful are you at doing that?
Okay, so it's a bit like horse racing. There is an attrition rate with greyhound racing. Some dogs don't make it to the end of their racing career, but that's the same with any pet animal that you might have as well. I've got a greyhound at home. They run around the field, they do get injured, and it's the same on the racetrack or off the racetrack when they're being trained. But the idea is that, assuming that they get to the end of their retirement period, is that we find them a home. So 86% of dogs that race find a home.
As a breed, though, will they become more and more rare as greyhound racing becomes less and less popular? Because I was just looking at some stats saying that in the 40s it was such a popular pastime to go and watch greyhound racing. About 70 million people would do that. Now it's less than 2 million going to watch greyhound racing, and they're being closed, the tracks are being closed hand over fist. So if they're bred for racing, will there come a point where actually there'll be so few greyhounds you won't have a problem housing them?
No, I mean, most of the dogs that are raced over here come from Ireland, although there are some British-bred dogs as well, and those numbers are down, but that's reflecting exactly what you're saying there, that some of the tracks have closed. But you've got to remember there's still 21 tracks that operate within England and Scotland. It's a big economic contributor as well. There's 11,000 people that are employed within greyhound racing, and there is, at this stage, there's no issue with a drop-off in dogs.
There is still a lot of racing as well at the various tracks, like day in, day out. Probably more racing this year than there has been in the previous few years as well. So there's still a lot of greyhound racing. And what you were just going back to what you were saying about what happens to them at the end of the career, as Mark said, 86% will end up finding homes, but a lot of them have to wait a lot of years to find that home. So you'll get, especially the big black dogs, because there's so many black ones, they end up in kennels for, they can be there for
Julie,
years before they get their home.
I can't believe this. I have a rescue dog, which is a black rescue dog, right? And I never once thought that the colour of the dog would have been an issue. But Jacqueline, who has 2 white dogs, and that's popular. Do you know why that is?
I think mainly it's because the way breeding's gone and the best dogs have been bred from are black. So there's so many black ones. So, for example, Hersham Hounds, if you went there now, you'd see kennel after kennel after kennel of black dog, and then you might see one brindle and one white dog, and they stand out because there's so many black dogs. Whereas how do you choose between the black dogs? They kind of all look the same in the kennel. You'd have to take your time to really get to know their personalities to differentiate.
Also, I heard this theory that apparently black dogs don't photograph well. It's very hard to see them.
In the days of social media and
you
Instagram.
You wouldn't base it on that.
Some people do, apparently.
Your dog does photograph well.
Well, I do. There are difficulties, so you just can't take any picture. You have to have the light in the right direction, or else you genuinely don't see them. But it's an added complication that we've got here. And the thing is, just my experience of Hersham and going to see the dogs is that they're immediately, if I was looking to adopt, right, and these are rescue dogs when you think about it. Jackie's little dogs, they're small and they're defenseless and whatever. These are big dogs. They look powerful. They can make a lot of noise initially, and that's the thing that people see first. And I think sometimes they think this is going to be a battle of wills, me against them. I'm not
intimidating because of the size.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do greyhounds down at all. No. I'm just actually understanding, faced with little cuddly white cutie pie here.
So do you think this now, looking at Lola here today in the studio?
Lola's a beautiful dog.
And you met Lola's asleep on Sky News.
Yeah, and is Lola what's called a brindle? Is Lola?
Yes, she's brindle, yeah.
Beautiful. Brindles are sort of brown with black.
Well, it's like a tiger.
I'll go the opposite way because our dog's black.
Yeah.
And he's 35 kilos. And we had on Monday, we launched an apprenticeship scheme. So we're trying to get young people into the sport. And this was about trying to encourage more people at the sort of kennel hand stage to come in. And we took Baz, which is my dog, along. And the vet stood there and did an examination of the dog so that she's trying to look at disease prevention, etc. Now, he was prodded and pulled and poked for about half an hour by not only the vet, but then the apprentices as well. He didn't budge, and he didn't wink at it. He didn't cry out or anything like that. So He's the placidest dog that I've got.
Temperament was very good.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Temperament was very
perfect.
good.
The way-
And there's I mean, if they're trained to chase something that looks like a rabbit,
Yeah.
they're not a danger.
She met a rabbit in Windsor. We took her to Windsor for a weekend
Right.
for my birthday, and there was a busker who had a rabbit, and she met the rabbit. I've got the photo. I've tweeted
and that was
it.
okay.
She was absolutely
All right,
fine.
does she chase a handkerchief or wind?
No, she doesn't.
Newspaper
she
blowing
has
down
a
the
little
street.
run around and then she sleeps.
She's got
But
her
that
toys.
impression you've got, it's just not the way they are.
No,
She's
no, no.
never
I'm only
barked.
giving the impression. No, this is what people will be saying.
Yeah.
This is what people be
I
saying.
Do you
Yeah,
think the kind of rise of the sort of super cute crossbreeds, you
Yeah.
know, the cockapoos
The
and
designer.
the cockadoodles or whatever they're called, and they all kind of look the same, a bit like teddy bears. People want a dog a lot of the time that looks like a teddy bear. I've got 2 teddy bears. Mine are from the Dogs Trust, by the way.
Yeah.
I didn't buy them like that. They were
Yeah.
like that. But do you think that maybe puts people off the look of the greyhound?
I don't know. I don't know because I know them for their personality, and I just know they're the most adorable dogs. I meet the cockapoos and the cavapoos, and I think they're gorgeous as well. But they look like hard work to me compared
But
to
we've
a
got
greyhound.
we've got a big problem with greyhounds, particularly black ones. There's 6,500. They need homes. They need to be loved. They are very, very lovable and adorable. Julie, what should folks do if they're interested?
If they're thinking of getting a dog, just go to your local homing centre and give it a chance. Even if you don't end up getting a greyhound, just go and walk volunteer or go along on a Sunday with your children, which is how I got into it with my parents, and just meet some greyhounds because they will change your mind about what they're like.
Okay. Lola, thank you very much. Lola wouldn't be the first guest that has gone to sleep in the studio, but she's allowed. She's allowed. Thank you very much indeed, Mark Bird as well. Julie
beautiful.
Collier,
Thank
thank you
you
very
for
much.
having us.
And just good luck with what you're trying
Yeah,
to do.
thank you.
And remember,
And
even
thank
if you
you for
don't
your
want
support.
if you don't want to adopt, you can also you can sponsor, can't you?
You can sponsor greyhounds. You sponsored a greyhound
Yeah.
at Hersham Hounds, didn't you? You can also volunteer. You can go down and walk them. You know, they're always after blankets and towels or anything.
Well, I
we've
think
got
that's a
that
very good
you
idea.
can
It's a very
take
good
out.
point you said. Sometimes people think I'm not ready for a dog, but actually you're right. You can test drive them,
Yeah.
and you can actually not have a dog at home. You might live in a flat or something, and they're not allowed. But you can actually go to a rescue centre, you know, particularly these greyhounds, and you can walk them and return them, and you can feel good about that. And that could be a good role that you could do.
You could take them to the pub for the day. If you work long hours Monday to Friday, you could foster at the
Yeah.
weekends.
We could do lots of things,
There's
but
lots of
running out of time.
options.
Lola wants to go
Lola,
now.
come
We've got to go. We've got news, and we're going to be back right after this. Thank you, guys. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Talk Radio.